The moment my client shouted those words in a crowded cafe, the world seemed to tilt on its axis, like a glass about to shatter from the inside. I had walked into that place thinking it would be another ordinary meeting, another polite exchange between a struggling young professional and the consultant hired to guide her through a messy chapter of her life. Instead, her sudden, fierce outburst froze every breath in my chest. People turned. Cups rattled. For a second, time itself felt embarrassed to move forward. That was the instant I realized I had stepped into a story that was far more complicated than contracts and calendars, a story tangled with feelings no one had dared to name. If moments like this make you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of doing the right thing when it's hardest, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. The Kindness Chronicles, so more real, human stories can find their way to hearts that need them. I had met her weeks earlier in a cramped office that smelled faintly of old paper and fresh coffee, where people came when their lives felt too heavy to carry alone. She was calm in a practiced way, composed with the careful precision of someone who had learned to build walls early. Her eyes were alert but tired, the kind of tired that sleep does not fix, the tiredness of carrying other people's expectations like unpaid debts. She told me about her career, about the pressure of deadlines, about how her personal life felt like a series of loose threads she could never quite knot into something whole. There was a man she mentioned casually, always described as a friend, always placed in stories as a background character, a steady presence who helped her move apartments, who brought soup when she was sick, who knew her favorite songs. She insisted there was nothing more there, and I believed her, because believing people is part of the job, and because sometimes the truth hides best in plain sight. As our sessions continued, the picture of her life grew sharper and more complicated. She had built success on discipline and silence, on being the dependable one who never asked for too much. She was admired at work but invisible at home, surrounded by people yet deeply alone. The man she called her friend hovered at the edges of her stories like a lighthouse she refused to sail toward, guiding her through storms without ever asking her to come ashore. I noticed how her voice softened when she mentioned him, how her guarded expressions loosened just a little, as if the mention of his name unlocked a small window of warmth she otherwise kept closed. Still, she repeated that they were just friends, and I respected that boundary, because sometimes naming a feeling too soon can scare it back into hiding. The cafe where everything unraveled was supposed to be neutral ground, a public place where we could talk about her next steps without the stiffness of the office. Sunlight filtered through dusty windows, catching in the steam of coffee cups and turning the air golden. She arrived late, breathless, her usual calm replaced by a tight urgency I had never seen before. The man she called her friend was there too, waiting at a nearby table, his presence unexpected but not unwelcome to her, or so it seemed at first. They greeted each other with the easy familiarity of people who had shared too many ordinary moments to count. I tried to keep the meeting focused, but there was a current running beneath every word, a tension that hummed like a live wire beneath the polite surface of our conversation. Then it happened in a blink, the kind of moment that changes the shape of memory. Another man approached our table, someone from her workplace who greeted her with the careless confidence of someone who assumed access to her space. His hand lingered on her arm in a way that was too familiar, too entitled, and in that instant the mask she had worn so carefully fell away. Her reaction was swift and raw, a flare of protectiveness that came not from politeness but from something deeper and older. The words she threw into the room were sharp enough to cut through the cafe's warm noise, and in them was a truth she had never allowed herself to speak. The room seemed to lean in, as if even strangers could sense that something private had just been dragged into the light. After the moment passed and the cafe returned to its murmuring rhythm, there was a silence between us that felt heavier than any argument. Her face drained of color as the weight of what she had revealed settled in. The man she had always called her friend looked at her not with surprise, but with a quiet sadness, the kind that comes from waiting too long for someone to choose you openly. In that silence, I saw the cost of her careful distance, the way protecting herself from vulnerability had slowly starved her of the very connection she needed most. The challenge before her was no longer about schedules or strategies, but about honesty, about facing the feelings she had buried under years of being strong for everyone else. In the days that followed, our conversations changed in tone and depth. She struggled with the fear of what acknowledging her feelings might demand of her, afraid that choosing one truth would unravel the fragile balance of her life. She spoke about the safety of calling someone a friend, about how that word had been her shield against the risk of being seen and possibly rejected. I listened as she confronted the small, painful realizations that come when you understand you have been the one setting your own limits. Growth rarely arrives without discomfort, and her struggle was a slow, uneven climb toward a view she had never dared to imagine for herself. The man she had kept at arm's length did not demand answers or declarations. Instead, he gave her space to breathe into her own honesty, to approach him not out of obligation but out of choice. Watching her learn to sit with her feelings without pushing them away was like watching someone learn to trust their own heartbeat after years of bracing for disappointment. She began to show up differently, not just in her relationships but in her work, her friendships, and the quiet moments she spent alone. The more she allowed herself to be real, the lighter she seemed to move through the world, as if each small truth she claimed returned a piece of herself she had forgotten how to carry. What stayed with me most was not the dramatic outburst in the cafe, but the quiet courage that followed it, the way she chose to face the discomfort of honesty rather than retreat into the familiar safety of denial. Her journey was not about romance alone, but about learning that kindness to oneself is the first step toward kindness with others, that second chances begin when we allow ourselves to grow beyond the stories we have been telling about who we are allowed to be. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of a moment when you wished you had been braver with your feelings or kinder to your own fears, please take a moment to like, comment, share this video, and subscribe to The Kindness Chronicles so more stories of quiet courage and human connection can reach people who need them. And before this story ends, I have one special request for you to leave in the comments below. Write one line about a time you chose honesty over comfort, even if it scared you, because your words might be the light someone else needs to take their first brave step forward.